Dr. Rachel H. Nguyen wasn't exactly looking for an alien to hit on her, let alone an alien with glowing skin, a body that seemed to be made of liquid mercury, and eyes that shimmered like a poorly lit disco ball. But there she was, at 11:17 a.m. sharp, sitting in a sterile, white room with the most unusual visitor of her life. Dr. Nguyen, the alien said, its voice a mix of smooth, liquid tones that felt more like it was inside her head than coming from the room. I come with a very unique proposition. Rachel blinked twice, not sure if she was dreaming. It had been a long week. The research grants had been a nightmare, her coffee machine had broken, again, and her assistant had finally quit after spilling acid on her favorite pair of shoes. A proposition, she said, trying to sound professional but knowing full well she had 100 different sarcastic remarks running through her mind. The alien nodded, its translucent face flickering in the light. Yes. A proposal that, I believe, will ensure the survival of my species. Rachel stared, trying to look unfazed, but if anyone could sense an awkward silence, it was her. The alien before her wasn't the kind that would feature in any Star Trek episode. This thing was an actual alien, the kind that came with no manual, no user guide, and no helpful pamphlets on what to do if your intergalactic guest had the exact opposite of human social skills. So, let me get this straight, she said, a wry smile curling at the corners of her lips. You come all the way to Earth, in some giant shiny spaceship, and you want me, a geneticist, to help you survive by, what, exactly? Adding a little human spice to your gene pool? The alien blinked. At least, Rachel assumed it was blinking. It wasn't so much a blink as an entire portion of its transparent face shimmered and reassembled itself. Yes, that's correct. We have exhausted all other options. My species is facing extinction because our genetic makeup has reached an evolutionary dead end. We are incapable of further progress. We need your human genes to continue. Rachel's eyebrows shot up so high that they almost disappeared into her hairline. So, what, you're asking for, interspecies mating? The alien's face became more fluid, almost as if it were uncomfortable, an odd trait for a being with no apparent facial muscles. Yes. But the process will be scientific, completely controlled, monitored, and, of course, voluntary. Rachel wanted to laugh. A tiny, unprofessional chuckle threatened to escape her lips, but she held it back with sheer willpower. Instead, she looked him dead in the shimmering eye and said, So, you want me to create a brand new species of alien-human hybrids that could change the future of both species? And I'm assuming this involves some kind of DNA swapping? I would prefer to call it merging, the alien replied diplomatically, right. Merging. You know, I'm gonna need a bit more than that, Rachel said, leaning forward, her fingers tapping nervously on the cold metal table. What exactly do you think I'm going to say to this? Do I just sign up for alien mating 101? The alien's face flickered again, a display of what might have been confusion. I fail to understand the difficulty. Your people have been experimenting with genetic modification for centuries. This is merely the next step. You're scientists, you're doctors, you're bioethicists, all the same. Well, yeah, sure. But the difference is that we don't need a totally different species' DNA to fix our problems, Rachel replied, her voice edging on incredulity. And most bioethicists I know would rather shove a syringe of pure liquid morality into their veins than do something like this. I'm not asking you to create hybrids for the sake of science, the alien continued, its liquid voice growing more insistent. I am offering you a solution to your problems. Think about it, immortality, disease eradication, new abilities, advancements in human biology. Hold up, Rachel interrupted, raising her hands like she was about to stop traffic. You want us to merge so you can get new abilities? Not happening. I've read all the bioethics journals, buddy. This isn't about advancement, it's about you trying to escape your inevitable extinction on the backs of, well, no offense, but us. There's no way I'm agreeing to any of this. And don't get me started on how the world governments will react. The alien fell silent, its shimmering face unreadable. For a long moment, there was only the hum of fluorescent lights overhead, then, almost imperceptibly, a shift occurred in the room. Rachel wasn't sure if it was her mind playing tricks on her or if the alien had just somehow convinced itself that its words were not about to be rejected. But before she could open her mouth to speak again, the alien's form shimmered into something she never expected to see. Suddenly, it was no longer just a glowing, vaguely humanoid shape. The alien had changed. The smooth liquid skin had formed a solid, recognizable shape, one with a face, with features that looked shockingly human. He had soft, chiseled features and even seemed to have, dare she say it, eyebrows. "You're going for the charming, human-like look now?" she asked dryly, fighting the urge to laugh. The alien, Jazax, as she would soon learn, smiled, if such a thing was possible. "Yes. It is easier to communicate this way." Rachel stared at him. "Well, color me surprised. I didn't think aliens could do charm." Jazax remained silent, as though contemplating her words. "I am asking you to consider what is at stake here, Dr. Nguyen. Your humanity's future is not so different from mine. You may not see it now, but your species is on the brink of genetic stagnation as well. Perhaps you do not need the hybridization, but your genes can be preserved for the greater good." Rachel leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "You really are persistent, aren't you?" He didn't answer, but there was something in his expression, or perhaps his change in appearance, that suggested he thought he had won her over. Rachel couldn't deny it. The proposition was both absurd and fascinating, impossible yet tantalizing. Her mind, ever the scientist, began to churn with possibilities. Was this a genuine plea for survival? Or was it just another power play? Could she, in good conscience, help preserve another species at the cost of her own? What did this mean for humanity? "I'll need to think about it," she said, her tone now less dismissive, more contemplative. Jazax nodded. "Of course. I will await your answer." And with that, Rachel Nguyen found herself staring at the shimmering alien, unsure if she'd just been given the most impossible scientific opportunity of the century, or the worst decision of her life. The following days dragged on in an almost surreal haze. Rachel found herself back at her lab, staring at her computer screen, but all she could think about was Jazax's proposal. Her mind ping-ponged between skepticism, curiosity, and an odd sense of intrigue that she couldn't shake off. She had dismissed his offer as an impossible science fiction fantasy at first, but the more she thought about it, the more it began to gnaw at her. What if there was something to it? What if this was real? She couldn't get the image of Jazax's human-like face out of her head, either. Not because it was especially striking, far from it, but because it was so strange. Like a man trying too hard to fit in at a party where no one really wanted him there. That artificial smoothness, the way his features seemed to settle into a more human-like expression, unsettled her. Was this what humanity was supposed to evolve into? Some hybridized version of itself? Was there really no other way for both species to survive? Rachel was a scientist. She'd spent her entire life studying genetics, seeing the beauty in the minutiae of chromosomes and the tiny, often invisible variations that defined life as we knew it. She knew that humanity was on the verge of many breakthroughs, from curing diseases to possibly extending life well beyond its natural span. But merging with another species, giving up her own humanity, her own identity, was she ready to make that leap? Could she make that leap? By Thursday afternoon, her head was a mess of competing ideas. She had read every scientific paper on hybridization, genetic adaptation, and the possible outcomes of human-alien integration. Every paper, that is, except for the ones that truly mattered. The ones she knew she had to read, the ones that would force her to make a decision, the bioethical reports. The ones filled with impossible questions about what we owed the future, and whether survival was worth losing everything we were in the process. She sat at her desk, fingers poised over the keyboard, when Samuel walked into the lab. He was dressed casually in a blue button-down shirt and khakis. He always looked like he was a few steps ahead of the latest fashion trends, even when he wasn't trying. "Hey," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Busy?" Rachel sighed and spun her chair toward him, the chair squeaking under her weight. "You could say that." Samuel raised an eyebrow, glancing at the papers scattered across her desk. "More bioethics, huh?" She chuckled dryly. "Yeah, and a little bit of alien-human hybridization thrown in for fun." "Ah," Samuel said with a knowing grin. "Jazax's idea." "Funny how you know exactly what I'm talking about," Rachel muttered, rubbing her eyes. "Am I that predictable?" Samuel asked, pushing off the doorframe and walking over to her desk. He picked up one of the reports, scanning it quickly. "I figured you'd be all over this. It's everything you've been working toward, right? I mean, think of it, genetic breakthroughs, healing powers, disease cures. You'd be the most famous scientist in the world. People would be worshipping you. Hell, I'd worship you." Rachel couldn't help but roll her eyes. "Worship me? Seriously? You think I want that kind of attention?" Samuel grinned and dropped the paper back on her desk. "Well, no. But think about it, Rachel. This could be the opportunity of a lifetime. You could give humanity the tools to evolve. You'd be changing the very fabric of who we are." "Or," Rachel interrupted, "I'd be turning us into something else entirely. Something we don't even recognize." Samuel looked at her, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. "You really think that's what would happen? You're not seriously considering rejecting this, are you? I mean, our genes, our biology, what if it could be better? Stronger? We could give our children things we never thought possible. I can't imagine anyone in your field passing up a chance to push the boundaries like this." Rachel stood up suddenly, pacing back and forth. "Better? Stronger? Samuel, we've been tampering with genes for decades. Yes, we've made improvements, but we've also opened doors we can't close. We're one bad mutation away from creating something that could destroy us all. What if we let these aliens inject their DNA into our gene pool, and we end up creating a hybrid species that's smarter, faster, stronger, but completely inhuman? Do we just wave goodbye to what makes us human in the process?" Samuel's expression softened, and he moved toward her, his voice gentle now. "But maybe what makes us human is the ability to evolve. To survive. Isn't that what we've been doing since the beginning of time? Adapting to whatever challenges come our way? We're not just talking about some mad scientist's dream here, Rachel. We're talking about saving lives, possibly extending human civilization. By becoming them?" Rachel shot back, her voice rising in frustration. "By giving up what makes us human? Where does that end, Samuel? Do we lose everything in the name of survival?" For a moment, there was silence. Samuel watched her, his face unreadable. Then, in a softer voice, he said, "Maybe what makes us human isn't just our genes. Maybe it's the fact that we're willing to change, to grow, to adapt. To think beyond ourselves." Rachel shook her head. "I don't know. Maybe you're right. Or maybe this is the point where we stop and ask if we should. Maybe survival is overrated." Samuel smiled, a faint, wistful look in his eyes. "I've never known you to back down from a challenge. But I get it. This isn't just science. It's a question of ethics. It's about what it means to be human. Rachel met his gaze. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, finally, she sighed, her shoulders sagging under the weight of the decision. I don't know if I can make this choice, Samuel. I'm not sure anyone can. The next day, Rachel returned to the lab early, unable to sleep through the night. It was one of those rare occasions when her mind refused to rest, the constant pull of the unknown keeping her awake, unable to shake the feeling that something huge was hanging in the balance. She had gone over the data again, reread every file, every report, every theory. And she was still no closer to a decision. But then, as if on cue, her phone rang. It was an encrypted call from a number she didn't recognize. She hesitated only for a moment before answering, her heart already pounding in her chest. Dr. Nguyen? The voice on the other end was calm, almost robotic, but there was a sense of urgency beneath the surface. Yes, Rachel replied, steeling herself. Who is this? This is Jazax. I'm calling to inform you that we need your decision. The council has made it clear, the time to act is now. We cannot wait any longer. Rachel's heart skipped a beat. You're serious about this? We are, Jazax replied. The future of both our species depends on your choice. A silence lingered in the air as Rachel stared at the screen, the weight of his words settling heavily in her chest. Give me some time, she said, her voice steady despite the turbulence inside her. I need to think this through. I understand, Jazax answered. But understand this, Dr. Nguyen, time is not on our side. The call ended. Rachel sat there, staring at the blank screen for several long moments. Time was running out, and so was her ability to escape the decision that lay ahead. As she sat in the silence, Rachel realized something. She didn't need more time to think. She already knew what she had to do.